Day 120 in the north. Darkness falls in. The season of the midnight sun is over. From now on, daylight gets remarkably shorter, day by day. Yet there's an element of this change that I've longed for during those months of 24 hours daylight. It's the unique ambience, the solitude, and the beautiful play of light against a backdrop of deep blue landscapes. Because even in the darkest, there always lies the bright. And so this season always holds something special for me. And it might sound odd, but I'm looking forward to it. To the blue hours again, the storms and rain, the light and a special visit of the Northern Lights. So welcome to this new chapter in the North, where the absence of the midnight sun gives rise to a different kind of brilliance. After an incredible summer on Lofoten, it was time for a new adventure. Together with Frauke and Hannes, we drove further north, hopeful to catch the early signs of autumn. Since we were still tired from the past eventful weeks on Lofoten, we reveled in the simpler joys of our adventure. We spent our evenings sitting around campfires, sharing stories, nestling in our van, and wandering through the mountains and forests. Our journey continued along the coastline. We soon reached an island just a touch north of Lofoten. As the final days of August were closing in, the rush of the peak tourist season started to fade. The once crowded places began to see fewer visitors each day, and this returning quiet was a welcome change. Back on the mainland, our friends Benedikte and Simon invited us to their off-grid cabin, a family gem tucked away in the heart of a serene fjord. This lovely wooden cabin is situated right beside a towering mountain, with a huge glacier on its peak and clear blue rivers down below. When we got there, we started by warming up the cabin with a fire and brewing some coffee. Benedikte began making cinnamon buns, filling the air with a sweet and tasty scent. As they baked in the oven, we stepped outside, picking fresh berries around the cabin. That evening, Simon, Hannes and I decided to maintain an old hiking path leading up the mountain. The trail was barely visible and was quite hard to navigate around, with only Simon's faint childhood memories knowing the trail. Along the way, we snacked on wild cloudberries and blueberries to keep our energy up. And all that effort was worth it. At the end, we were treated to views that probably not many have had the chance to see. After some days we hiked out again, back to our cars and debated what to do next. We decided to continue our drive north. Our next hike reminded me a lot on a Lord of the Rings movie. On the morrow, accompanied by my trusty hobbits, we embarked upon a quest to uncover a hidden glacier, a jewel of ice and time, tucked away deep in the distant valley. Our path meandered through an ancient forest, shadowed by trees of old, as we trailed the glacial river upstream, glowing with an eternal blue only known legends. As we emerged from the woodland's cloak, a vast valley, fogged by the mighty hands of the glacier's past, lay before us. The land was a tapestry of vibrant green, with countless shimmering streams, all converging to form the mighty river. Above, the Sentinel Glacier stood, its icy fingers reaching down from the mountain's heights, casting a cool shadow upon the realm below. And then, the moraine wall rose before us, a monolith of stone and memory, bearing witness to the glacier's ancient might and march. The world transformed around us. The greens of the valley were replaced by a stark stone-laden expanse, with only the mystical blue of the glacial lagoon breaking its monochrome. As we stood in awe at the base of the glacier, for a fleeting moment, the very fabric of reality seemed to waver. From the glacier, our hike took us deeper into the valley's heart. Hidden in this vast expanse, at a point where several large glacial rivers meet, a wooden cabin is located. It felt like this cabin was just waiting for us, a welcoming hide in the middle of the wild. The panorama around us was nothing short of breathtaking, both raw and serene at the same time. Towering steep mountains with waterfalls cascading down, distant glaciers and bushes generously loaded with berries. The soundscape was painted by the rain's gentle rhythm, the flow of the rivers and the distant rumblings from the shifting glaciers. We found joy in the rain, feeling and embracing every drop. But as the sky darkened, we cozied up in the cabin's shelter. Inside, with the warmth of a fire, we found ourselves getting lost in watching the rain dance against the landscape. Such moments, away from the world's hustle, with no signal and just the company of my close friends, always hold a special place in my heart. We played card games for hours, losing track of time, and just before we called it a night, we went outside, watching the surroundings slowly turn into a deep dark shade of blue. made our way toward the Swedish border. The drive was shaped by a lot of rain, but also countless rainbows and scenic ferry rides through landscape brushed in blue. From time to time, the sun would peek through, casting a warm glow and playing a gentle game with the morning fog that seemed to greet us each day. As soon as we crossed into Swedish Lapland, a faint green band painted the sky. It was quite hard to spot at first, but it got stronger and stronger. What an incredible welcome! It was our season's first glimpse of the Northern Lights. We found ourselves stopping every now and then, slowing down the whole drive, but it was just too fascinating, gazing into the sky and watch the aurora dance.
Wow!
At some point, we decided to settle for the night by a lake we were driving past. We had some plans to catch up with Annie and Matthias later that day, to hike deep into the wild heart of Swedish Lapland for a couple of days. We started our hike with heavy backpacks and high spirits. The first stretch was a 15-kilometer long trek along a straightforward forest road, followed with a path through a dense and beautiful forest, leading us to a hut by the evening's end. We decided to push an additional 400 meters in elevation and set our base camp somewhere along the mountain, hoping it would make the next day a bit easier. After covering 21 kilometers, we finally set up base camp. My feet were begging for a rest, and I couldn't wait to dive into my sleeping bag. It was already 11 p.m. and our alarm was set for an early start at 2:30 a.m. Our aim was to reach the mountain's peak in time to greet the sunrise. The next day began cold, and temperatures down to -2 Celsius made it even harder to get out of the warmth of the sleeping bag. Yet we all had the motivation to keep on pushing. An additional 10 kilometers and a climb of 600 meters awaited, leading to a destination I had dreamed about for ages. By the time we reached the summit, the early sun was beginning to rise, painting everything in warm tones and sending a red streak through the clouds, casting a glow on the distant mountain. lost in the view, finding details in the valley below, and trying to realize in what surrounding we are. Words can hardly capture the view that lay before us. Even photos or videos cannot do justice. Rivers meandering through a huge valley, separating and connecting again, forming textures and shapes along the way, with colors ranging from the richest of blue to the most vivid of greens, all in the background of the autumn foliage of the valley. After soaking in the views, we settled down for a much-needed breakfast. We stayed on the peak for another hour, but as the wind began to pick up, we decided to head back to camp. Our initial plan was to stay another night, resting and hiking out the following day. However, with the forecast predicting heavy rain, we opted for a short power nap and then packed our gear and started the way out. As we left the national park, nature bid us farewell with a spectacular sunset, casting a golden hue on the mountain we had been on earlier that morning. When we began our trek on the forest road, rain began to fall, ending our day with a beautiful rainbow before the night took over. By midnight we collapsed in our beds, having covered 55 kilometers in less than 36 hours, but it was worth every single step. Over the next few days, we slowed things down. We met up with our friend Magnus, who gave us a little tour of the area, took some short walks, and just enjoyed the downtime. The sunsets truly stood out, set against a backdrop of grand mountains being reflected in the calm waters. Each sunset felt like a painting coming alive. Also a touch of winter began to make its mark, as a fresh blanket of snow covered the peaks of the tallest mountains. We had the chance to take a helicopter ride to the place we previously hiked. Seeing the landscape in its autumn hues from above was a whole new experience. Flying over the valley and its winding rivers put this whole place in another perspective. It was quite fascinating to see the trails we had hiked before from a bird's eye perspective. We spent the next evening by the campfire, enjoying marshmallows and freshly baked bread over the flames. It was time to move, and we decided to head further east to Finland. Autumn was in full swing in Finland. With temperatures dropping, especially up north, it sometimes felt like it's already coming to an end. The vibrant yellow and the orange against the snow-kissed landscape were a beautiful sight. We headed over to our friend's place and got treated to a breathtaking sunrise by the lake. We couldn't resist taking a paddle across the calm water, especially with the golden fog wrapping around us. The following dawn we set out to hike to River Bend within the national park. On the lookout, clouds wrapped around the trees in the valley and everything felt like an ethereal scene. Once the sun came out, the fog cleared and the treetops were lit up in a golden tone. Fast forwarding a few days, we found ourselves journeying back to Lofoten. Odin! Hey! A few years back, we had been captivated by the vibrant fall colors there. The typical bluish rugged peaks set against the colorful hues of autumn create a surreal scenery. The weather forecast was promising, clear skies with, most important, no incoming storms. Without hesitation we geared up, hiking to a nearby beach to pitch our tents and spend the night right by the ocean. It was a chance to enjoy the last bit of autumn sun. As darkness fell in, we started a fire and enjoyed its warmth until late.
I've taken my life back and
Around midnight, I stepped outside, hoping to catch a glimpse of the northern lights. Fortunately, they showed up. A large green arc spanned the horizon right over our tents. The following day, after our beach camp, we hiked to a familiar viewpoint in Rheine. Despite being up there many times, this spot never ceased to surprise me with always different conditions. And this time was no exception. As the sun began to cast its first rays against the ridge, low clouds slowly came in, wrapping around the stones and settling on one side of the mountain. The early morning sun painted them in a golden hue, creating a breathtaking scenery. In the last days of October, we spent most of our time with Tara and David. With the calm of the islands and the absence of other tourists, we often found ourselves as the only ones in cafes or popular spots. We had initially thought of staying until Lofoten experiences its first snowfall, but the weather forecast destroyed this plan very quickly, predicting rain and storms for the foreseeable future. So we soaked in every minute of our remaining sunny moments and started thinking about our journey south.
Sleeping like a child, so luminous and vibrant. I'm always in bloom for you. Always in bloom, always in bloom for you. So many times I've stranded, a castaway, and I'm not sure of those stranger in this continent. I'm always in bloom for you. Always in bloom, always in bloom for you. An infatuated light. Although it hurts me, be with you. I'm always in bloom, always in bloom for
At our final campsite, the Northern Lights showed up once more, dancing above our van, a fitting and spectacular farewell. As October drew to a close, the days became noticeably shorter. After one last coffee by the sea and some care for Odin, we embarked on a nearly 3,000 kilometer long drive south. Once on the mainland, we journeyed past the vast landscape of the Fjälls and entered Sweden just below the Arctic Circle, where the season's first snow greeted us. Through Sweden's autumn-colored forests, our journey eventually brought us back to Germany. Our next adventure? Swapping out our vehicle and making a return trip for the winter. Until then, see you soon.
Was los?